Welcome to Small Caps. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today, I'm talking with John Lee. He's the Chief Executive Officer of FLYN Nickel Mining Corporation, and the TSX code is FLYN. John, great to see you. I know you're just back from the mine. Really appreciate your time because it's been a very busy time for FLYN Nickel at the moment. This is the first time you and I have had a chat. So for the benefit of our wonderful audience out there, can you just give us a brief overview of who are FLYN Nickel?
Thank you for the invitation, Kerry, to be on your show for the first time. We are a Canadian listed company on the Toronto Ventures Exchange. The company went public. It's a 6-month-old company. We went public in March, 6 months ago, and we raised a round of financing, $8.7 million, with the participation by some of the Australian issuers. Blackstone Minerals is one of our cornerstone investors, and our flagship project is the Minago nickel project, and companies all about metals, about extracting metals that power the future.
I love it, and I saw that on your website, metals that power the future. But the focus mainly is on your nickel project, which is Minago, and I know you just back from the mine. It's a very decent. It's an open pit. It's quite high grade. What do you like about it, and where are you at with it?
Right. Well, first of all, Kerry, I've been in the mining industry for about 20 years, and nickel is my specialty. Okay. Probably no other junior mining CEO can say that I probably have acquired more nickel projects than any other nickel junior CEOs out there.
Wow.
And I had my eyes on Minago 10 years ago, and we were fortunate to acquire the project last year for $20 million. And by the way, the company right now is trading at $12 million, still with $3 million cash in the bank. And we were just at the mine yesterday. It is one of the highest nickel sulphide open pit projects in the world right now, grading at 0.8% nickel. And Kerry, maybe 10 years ago, it would not blink an eye, but the current nickel sulphide mining grade, there are ones actually in mining, actively in mining operation, is 0.4%. And that is half. And that is half of what it was in 2005. And some research by AME Research, that's well-known 70-year-old institute in mining research, predicted a forecast that grades to go down further by half to 0.2% by 2029. And the reason it's got much to do with what Elon Musk is doing, and that is the advent of electric vehicles and the batteries that go into them.
Yeah, so talk to me about, you say that the nickel, I guess the grades of the mines around the world are getting less and less, but Minago is 0.8%, which is actually one of the highest, will be one of the highest grades.
Yes.
Did you look at a lot of assets before you decided to grab Minago and say, look, we're going to develop this? Because this is you're going to get this into a mine, aren't you? This is not exploration.
No, the project had over $50 million investment. The project's well drilled out. It's got 1 billion pounds of nickel. 2/3 of that is the measured in category, and 1/3 of that is inferred category. Tens of millions of dollars gone into the permitting process. All the environmental baseline studies being performed. The birds, the snakes, the bats, the horses, the water, the noise, the air, everything. And the final permitting papers being submitted with the government, and we have received some very positive preliminary feedback. So we're anticipating the adjudication process to complete before the end of the year. Now, Kerry, there has been, the traditional mining has been all been nickel sulfides. The advent of the nickel laterites has only been in place since 2010, when Chinese invented the nickel pig iron, which is a very dirty process. I'm sure Australia, you guys know about it. Yep. And so what happened is a lot of and because the nickel price has been consolidating between $5 to $10 a pound, below the rate of inflation, there has not been a lot of incentive and investment into nickel exploration. Then what happened as a result is that a lot of the open pit, majority of the open pit nickel sulfide mining operation depleted their ore, and there hasn't been any new discovery outside of Voisey's Bay, which is really the only sizable nickel sulfide project that's been commissioned in the last 20 years. I looked at a lot of the nickel deposits out there, and most of our peers, other than Noront in Canada, and that's the one already bought by Wyloo, and it was a big bidding war with BHP. And they're higher grades than nickel, but they require billions of dollars in infrastructure. And Minago is very close second in terms of grade. But what attracted me to Minago, besides the higher grade than some of our peers, they're grading at 0.2, 0.4, is that Minago has a hydro line within 1.5 kilometers in the Highway 6. So
wow.
This project could potentially be a greenfield project with a capital capex of under $1 billion, which used to be a big number. Everybody said, wow, but nowadays $1 billion is people throw down like
they used to say $1 million.
Yes. So I looked at a lot of projects. I like this project the best. I bought a lot of other projects in the Yukon, in other projects in Manitoba, in the north, and Ontario, but we had to let these projects go because these were back before all the EV wave started, and we'll have to divest them in 2015 because the low nickel price went to $4 a pound. Yeah. So when the opportunity to acquire Minago came up, because it's through a colleague of mine, and he unfortunately was sick, and the company is going through insolvency, and we acquired the project for $20 million, so here we are. Yeah.
John, you've acquired the project, you've raised some funds. I'm talking to you now in September of 2022. What's Flying Nickel going to be doing between now and the end of the year? What's the news that's going to be starting to come out? Where's the value? We're talking to an investor audience, and they want to know, well, where's Flying Nickel at? Where's the value add?
We started the year in 2022 before we go public, we approached our investors and we laid out our mandates, and there are 3 pillars. Number 1 is drilling exploration, because there hasn't been a drilling the project sat dormant since 2011 for the last 10 years. Wow. We completed a 2,500. Well, that's actually not unusual. There's a lot of projects that are advanced through feasibility study, and it's still 2011. The bull market in commodity only started around late 2018, as you know. Yep. So I think the first thing is the first major initiative we do is exploration. So we did a 2,500 meter drill program. The program completed in May, and the assay results are due any moment. So we should be in position to share some of the initial assay results within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And that is a combination of the infill drilling and the exploration wildcat drilling. Majority of the prior resource was done on the 1 kilometer diameter roundabout that deposit, but we found that there is an extension to the northeast. We had drilled a couple of 500 meter holes that is beyond the 200 meter depth that previous operator had drilled. So if there's discoveries made with that extension at depth of the extension to the northeast, then we could be looking at something that could be quite that could be a game-changing event. And not only is the extension open at depth, but the whole resource can be contiguous as one entire big resource. So I think that's the first thing. And the secondly, we're looking to complete update and complete a feasibility study by the end of the year. There was a study already completed in 2009, of which we are updating. Not all is bad, Gary, even though there's inflation in the last 10 years. However, the Canadian loonie, kind of like Aussie dollars, trading at a hefty discount to the American dollar, whereas 10 years ago, as you recall, both Aussie and American dollars at up to 20-25% premium. So we're looking to release that study as soon as it's completed by the end of November. And then third and not least is complete the permitting process. So little do we know when we acquired the project, because it was the process of filing for insolvency. But after we acquired the project, we approached the Manitoba government, and we learned that the project permit is actually in good standing.
Oh, wow.
Outside of a minor notice of alteration in the design of the project, which we completed the requisite studies, already made the submission in June. And we had a couple of dialogues. We received the feedback, and we amended our filings. And we're quite optimistic that by the end of the year, we could be receiving the green light and make this project shovel ready. So all in all, at the start of the year, when we talked to a lot of investors, like, John, get the hell out of here. You're telling me with an $8 million budget, you can do a round of drilling, you can complete a feasibility study, and you can have all the required permits to have the project shovel ready, all in 2022. And you know what? We are on track to deliver that. We still have over $3 million of funding. And this is about delivering under promise, over deliver on schedule.
John, just while we're talking about that, what's your background? I mean, have you been involved with the industry for quite some time, and why nickel? Why do you like nickel versus many other commodities?
I started my career in the Silicon Valley back in the late mid 90s, and I was very fortunate in timing and semi-retired year 2000. So after that, I sort of stumbled onto the junior mining space by accident. Altogether, have over 22 years of experience in the mining industry. First 10 years as an investor, individual investor, I was doing very well. And in 2011, coming out of the financial crisis, I took on the hobby. Say, hey, maybe fun running a mining company as a hobby. And little do we know, it's 12 years later. I've raised over $150 million through the Toronto Stock Exchange. I have visited, traveled 35 countries around the world, visited dozens of mineral exploration projects as part of the due diligence, acquired, have done over 15 M&As with a particular focus on nickel. And Karen, I like nickel because it's not like gold and silver. You're chasing needle in a haystack, and you need to really have some exploration know-how. And it's not as much as common as copper, where it's copper production is around 10 times more than nickel. So it's something that has leverage. But I was 10 years early, because at that time, that was the start or the invent of the nickel pig iron with the nickel laterite, which single-handedly doubled the nickel production. That's why nickel sat for 10 years. Nickel prices, 10 years, went nowhere. Yep. And then all of a sudden, Elon Musk came in 2002 years ago and say, minus nickel, give a big contract. I think that not only siphoned the supply, but also attracted quite a bit of speculator, which caused the nickel price 6 months ago in March, that zoomed from $10 a pound, fivefold to $50 a pound. This is absolutely unprecedented. And I thought I've been around for 20 years, seeing everything. Nobody's ever seen, and this is not some rare earth or some minor metals, one of the base metal foundations where it went as far and as fast as it did. And we think, even though there's been retraced back to where it started, but now it's resting on major support, whereas it was once a major resistance at a $10 level. And I think, kind of fulfill my prophecy back 10 years ago that this is one of the metal that could have oomph and the leverage when everything comes together. And we believe the best is yet to come.
And I think you're right. There's been a lack of exploration, a lack of development in all sorts of commodities, but nickel is going to have its time because it's needed for this revolution that's coming, the electric vehicle revolution. One of the things you mentioned a moment ago was the power and also the hydropower, making this potentially quite a carbon emission lower than most other nickel mines. Is that correct? Can you talk us through that? Because I think a lot of people, customers, will be looking at what is your carbon emissions.
Right. Well, I think 2 points. Let me just talk about nickel's sort of outlook. EV, by a very conservative estimate, say a 40% penetration, something is even higher, by 2030 would require the amount of nickel required to have a 40% EV penetration by 2030 is equivalent to the amount of nickel coming out of the ground today. And nickel production 2021 was 4% less than it was 2020. So You're talking about a 5 billion pounds production in 2022, and the required nickel for EV by 2030 of 40 million EVs needs 5 billion pounds of nickel. So I don't know how you're going to double the EVs, how you're going to double the nickel supply to satisfy the EV demand. Most likely, there's going to be a substitute in the traditional stainless steel industry, and it also require much higher nickel price to stimulate additional supply that come on stream. And your question about the green nickel, we've consulted a couple of research firms, AME and SCARN. The per unit, so the carbon emission, the carbon intensity and carbon emission per unit of nickel production out of a mine like Manitoba, FLYN Nickel, is 1/100th. Okay, is 1% of the carbon emission coming out of nickel laterite deposits from Indonesia. The reason are twofold. First, the power coming from Indonesia is coal-fired, whereas hydropower in Manitoba. And secondly, the method of extraction is completely different. When you talk about laterite, you have to use what they call HPAL, which is high-pressured acid leaching. So you have to heat the ore between 300 degrees to 1,000 degrees, you have to apply pressure up to 50 times the normal pressure and to get the ore separated. And you have to dump the acid tailings into the ocean. So it's environmentally hazardous, to say the least. And the carbon emission is up to 100 times more than the nickel out of Canada. And that's why you see the Wyloo's and the BHPs going up to Canada hunting for sulphide. And it doesn't really happen too often because in Australia, Western Australia have plenty of also sulphide. So that just shows you that the major miners are hunting for, and they know the differentiate between nickel sulphide and nickel laterite. And then particular, there's a, and this is not just feeling good about a number printed on the screen, a carbon emission percentage. There is a very concrete tangibles in that there's the carrot and stick. In terms of carrot, Biden administration is provided billions of dollars of grant with strings attached. It has to be clean. And also in the future, everything you buy, from a television, a car, a boat, you're going to see nutritional table, not only the country of origin, the amount of carbons that's collectively from all the ingredients that goes into your end product. So I think that's the first thing. In the carrot is there's a lot of grants available. And the stick is countries like Sweden, countries like Australia is banning or imposing very heavy penalties on heavy carbon consumers. And not before you look, there's maybe even a carbon credit card where everybody has a limit as to how much carbon you can consume. So for the heavy carbon usage people, either they can lower that limit, or they have to go and buy carbon credits from the likes of, say, forestry and whatnot. So there is a very tangible dollar and bottom line impact on this green energy, and not all nickels are created equal.
John, let's just go back to a couple of things here. Minago, you said shovel ready by the end of the year. What does that mean? And what's the next steps after that?
Right. Yes. When you get shovel ready, there's two elements to it. There is, first of all, you have to have the permits and the consultation from the First Nations. You have to have the blessing and green lights from all stakeholders to put a hole in the ground. So that's what I mean by that. The requisite papers and permits and licenses required. And that last piece of license is called the Environmental Act license. And that is where we're working towards right now. Everything else is already in place. Okay. Now, the second part of the shovel ready will be getting the shovel. So that is project financing. Project financing will depend on a function of the market condition, and largely in part with it depends on the nickel price. So nickel price had run up to $50. Now it's kind of complete retracement to how it was started, which is $10. Yeah. We're looking to publish the feasibility study by the end of the year, concurrent with getting all the permits. So at that time, we'll be biding our time for nickel, depending on the economics of the project. We already have right now, we're in discussion with no fewer than 10 strategic investors. Some of them approached us unsolicited. And these are some of the largest auto manufacturers, some of the largest battery manufacturers. And they're looking for 5 to 10 years out, because they were not deterred. When in the first 2 minutes of the conversation, Carrie can tell I'm a straight shooter now. Yeah. I said, the earliest we can get the nickel out of the ground for you will be 2026. And they, too much of my surprise, they were relieved to hear that, because everybody else, according to them, our nickel counterparts, junior companies, were 2029 to 2032. So that just shows me, first of all, there is a future for nickel. And secondly, these guys have exhausted current quota and supplies from the Vales, from the BHPs, from the Trafigura's, from Glencore's, and they're looking out far and talking to juniors companies that are yet at a production stage. It just shows me that I think there's very solid fundamentals and insights we're getting from these manufacturers and battery manufacturers, auto manufacturers. And so we're looking forward to share the findings of the feasibility study at the end of the year. And at that time, we're going to look at the nickel price and look at the market conditions and look into putting this project into production.
Elon Musk said recently that what he's going to do is he's going to go and buy nickel mines directly. Would you look to do a sort of a joint venture with one of those major customers that you've just spoken about?
I mean, we're happy and receptive and open to talk to anybody who can help us to finance a mine into production, willing to share that risk. And the reward, of course, is that secured offtake, green nickel from top tier jurisdiction, and adhere to the most stringent ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So Honestly, Kerry, we're just so busy right now. We haven't had the chance to get introduced to Elon, but I'm very hopeful in the future we'll be able to. Elon's talking about building a gigafactory in Ontario, which is not far from Manitoba, and we're just so busy, and we've been approached by the Europeans, by the North Americans, by the different Asian countries, and I think once the feasibility study and once those permits being acquired, that really is going to pick up the pace, and that at that time we're really going to sort of exhaust our list in looking at who is the best, most suitable partner that can help us to get to that finishing line.
John, there's not a lot of time left, but before it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that I know it's not fully done deal yet, but there's a strategy with you to get into vanadium via Nevada Vanadium. Can we just touch on that briefly, if you wouldn't mind?
Right. Well, Kerry, Nevada Vanadium and FLYN Nickel were affiliated sister companies of Silver Elephant. So both companies were spun out of Silver Elephant last year. The purpose for sort of the idea of looking into merging those two companies back together again, and it's only at the non-binding letter of agreement stage, is really just to offer us an insurance policy. As the market is very volatile, when we went out of the market, nickel was flying high, and now everybody's flying low, hanging low. We just want to make sure that we it's a mutual hedging and insurance policy to sort of get a bigger critical mass, provide a better liquidity, and then getting us through this rough patch, and then get to the other end of the tunnel. I think, however, and there's also some operational synergy in terms of staffing, and I look forward to sharing a bit more detail once the deal gets into the definitive stage.
Right. When it gets definitive, come back and have a chat with me. Now, John, just to wrap up, if you wouldn't mind, tell our beautiful community out there, I want 3 reasons, not 25, just 3 reasons why they should be sitting up and taking notice of FLYN Nickel right now.
Well, we talked about the fundamentals of nickel, and we have I think it's one of my favorite metals. And secondly, just to reiterate some of the points we already talked about, I think number 1 is the grade. This is something I cannot overemphasize. You cannot find a new discovery or assets that's not controlled already by the majors that are boasting 0.74% open pitable nickel sulphide, not laterite, sulphide, in a politically safe jurisdiction, number 1. Number 2 is this potentially could be the greenest nickel mine in the world because it's hydropower and it's open pit optimized, and then because it's very gentle topography, can also lend itself to electric fleet that will further reduce the diesel consumption. Okay. And then third, Kerry, with all the craziness going on with COVID and everything, to make a discovery today and to getting a mine to production, it's going to take you 10 years. This project would potentially have all the requisite permits by the end of the year and the feasibility study, so that when the metal prices were to pick up, that we are ready to tap into project financing and put that project into production. This is one of the very few projects, if not only a handful maybe, in the world that could supply clean nickel to the market by 2026. And allow me to the point, sort of last but not least, Barrick CEO, Mark Bristow, about 6 months ago, I think he was on Reuters or Bloomberg, openly talking about need to emphasize and revisit Canada as a top investment jurisdiction. This is at a time when South Americas are going high inflation with riots and politics, and I think the United States right now is doing a little bit of soul searching, Kerry, on whether they're going to go pro-mining, or sort of, withhold from mining, and there's talk about oil and gas and all that. So they're doing a little bit of soul searching right now on their stands. Doesn't really leave a lot of other places you can go. Australia is one of the great destinations. Australia. But that, and then that also leaves Canada. So I think that's one of the, I think for some of the Australian investors looking to sort of branch out to Australia, Canada is definitely worth taking a look.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And if you did nothing else, the energy and the passion that John Lee brings to this project as CEO is evident when he chats about it. I love your passion and your enthusiasm for the project. As we said earlier, it's listed on the TSXV. Code is FLYN. John, make sure you come back and have a chat with us because there's a lot of news coming up.
Will do. And also look me up at Twitter. Look for John Lee at Battery Metals. I'm quite active. I'm a chartered financial analyst. So, and market analysis actually is my passion, and now I picked up mining alongside with it. So look me up at John Lee at Twitter under battery metals. Thank you, Carrie.
So there you have it as well. He's good with numbers. That's who you want running a project like this. Signing off for now. Thanks, John. Talk to you very soon.